Hey guys, Lorrena Magana here with NewFilmmakers Los Angeles. Today, I'm coming to you live from the world-famous Sunset Gower Studios. Thanks to Movie Maker magazine, I'm going to be presenting you with some of the most talented upcoming filmmakers hitting the 2012 Film Festival circuit. So come on, what are you waiting for? Let's check them out.
Think of all the crazy stuff that's probably happened here.
Dead Inside is the story of a mentally disturbed girl who she moves to a new town where the intention is for her to start over, and then a party descends on her new home with a group of teenagers, and she unfortunately has a premonition of their deaths right in the midst of this raging party, and makes the mistake, I suppose, of telling all her house guests that this is about to happen to them, and the rest of the movie is seeing whether or not her premonitions come true.
How did you come up with the concept for your film?
Being on the writer-producer side of this film, it really began, the kernel of it began as a challenge to myself to create characters that were compelling and sympathetic, put them in one location, and then create a scenario where it was just survivalist, and they would end up offing each other, more or less. So that was the premise, and it was enough to, once the characters were developed, the story kind of wrote itself.
The land makes our people healthy.
But you're not healthy.
Nanook is a live-action and stop-motion animated film. It's about a young girl with cancer, and it is set in Alaska.
Jill, how did you come up with the concept for Nanook?
I was inspired by the strength of my cousin Dylan. He passed away from cancer at the age of 6, and I really wanted to explore a way to have his story live on through a narrative form.
What inspires you as a filmmaker?
Every person has a different story, and it does not matter who you are, that you have a story to tell and a unique version of the human experience. So telling stories that are close to my heart or close to my experience, like being able to tell a story that relates to something that happened in my family, is very special because it's a way to share my very personal, sort of emotional experience with the world in a way that hopefully other people can relate to.
Slingshot is a short film set in Afghanistan that sees an AWOL Canadian soldier run into an Afghani boy who has lost his parents, and within each other they find their salvation.
How did you come up with the concept?
We wanted the movie to drop down the walls of racism and realize that just because you're a certain color doesn't make you an automatic terrorist. And so that's what we were addressing there, was that boy, although it doesn't appear in the movie, the backstory is his parents were killed simply for being musicians.
Where do you draw your inspiration from as filmmakers?
People, heart, stories,
family too.
Family. Like our mindset is, I remember one time as a young filmmaker, somebody bolted and sort of screwed me up, and I lost my mind. I was like, "What is this guy doing? This is my life. I'm going to kill him." And after I realized, like, people are more important than any story, so.
Sea Glass is about a man who wakes up in the middle of the desert, and he doesn't know why. All that he has is the wilderness around him and a suitcase that contain several items that provide him with some kind of sustenance, though none of it is food or water.
Did your music influence your creative process?
Absolutely. I knew that I would be able to tell a lot of the story through the sounds and the sound design, not just the music, but the sound effects and the Foley and all that kind of stuff. So I was definitely very much guided by writing what I know, I guess, and what I know is affecting people through sound. And the visuals were just a way to tell way more story than I could otherwise.
Synthetic World is a sci-fi epic squeezed into 4 minutes that represents our evolution in the future, human evolution in the future, with the help of technology rather than natural causes.
Any plans to develop this further into either a feature film or a web series?
Yes, the intent of the short film was to present it as a much bigger feature, and there was a lot of story development that was being done. There was a lot of character development, universe development, so that it feels like a huge, complete world that's that needs to be made into a feature. So yes.
Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped the stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he.
It's a verbatim telling of the Raven, word for word, the poem, and we set it in 1959 Hollywood. Poe is a screenwriter who's locked himself up in a seedy motel room, and he's watching old film reel of his lost love Lenore as the bird flies through the window.
How did you come up with the concept?
I think we were just inspired by the text, and so once we decided that this is, a film that we could do, we kind of took a step back from it and decided, or had to figure out how to tell the story that everybody's so familiar with in an original and captivating way.
I feel like all the tellings of the Raven are, a guy in a study with a quill pen, and we just think that, it's a much more timeless story than that. So we didn't want to set it in 2012, but setting it at some point in more modern times was something. And the text itself is just so visual, and we love, visuals and crazy colors and things like that. So it just worked perfectly.
Read! Well, Mayhem is a short about this young man named Reed Price, who's a former Special Forces officer, now working for an extremely wealthy family, kind of in somewhere in America. We won't say. We don't really nothing specific. And he works security for them, and it's his last night working for them. And meanwhile, there's all these crazy, mysterious vigilante killers killing rich families, and on his last night, they happen to come target the family he works for.
How did you come up with the concept?
We lived together, we were roommates for a while, and we actually had the idea, for a long time we toyed with this idea of having people come and attack the apartment, like a couple in the apartment, and we were just kind of like changing it all the time, like trying to like.
And so eventually we got this $40 million estate in Bel Air, so we ended up there.
Yeah, we ended up finding, we wrote a script, brought it to somebody who had access to, that kind of property and was able to, work that out for us. And so we just kind of, we upped it a little bit and raised the stakes.
Did we intend to make a politically charged film? Definitely not was our intention.
I would say it is most absolutely definitely not our intention. I think that's what people read into movies anyway. So you can look at, there's many films you could look at it and you could say, oh, this is that and this is this. And I feel that the beautiful thing about movies is they are open to opinion. They're not, it's open to interpretation. I mean, we started before really any of the Occupy Wall Street started happening. We've had this idea for a very long time. It just has developed, and it happens to have come about at this time, which I actually think is great for us because it brings up these questions and draws attention to it. But to answer it directly, I would say no.
Wait a minute, please. Hurry up, you Chinese fuck! I can't get the offer. Just wait a minute, please. Come on! Oh, shoot, please. Look, just wait. Look, just take the money. Hurry up, you Chinese fuck! Come on! Hold on, please. Just wait a minute.
It's a crime, lurid dramedy about a New York detective named Doc Foreman who suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of a bullet that's lodged in her head.
Was it an easy transition for you to go from actress to writer?
I've been writing now for about 6 years, and it was one of these things where the writing came very easily, I think because I read so many scripts, and the format is just so in my brain, and it became so easy, like frighteningly easy to write a script, because also I see everything in patterns and images, and so the writing was an easy transition, and I got very lucky very early on with it.
Any plans to make this into a feature film?
I've come close a few times with the feature, and I'm very hopeful. It's definitely, it has a great commercial potential. At the same time, it's got the luridness and it's exploitation, but you do it for real, and it's a really fun piece.
The film was basically my visualization of like the inside of somebody's mind. And so like thoughts and processes that happen in the mind are just floating around as objects and sort of little amoeba animals. And so one of those things becomes deformed, and then that goes into like the core of the guy's consciousness, and that creates a problem. And then he figures out that he can like fix this problem by reducing it into a standard form that like kind of kills his association with it and makes it so he can handle what it is, even though it's kind of a lie. And so that lie ends up turning him into less than human.
How did you come up with the concept?
It was a long time of just seeing people who would simplify things that they interacted with. And through doing that, they would slowly alienate themselves from reality. I see like, children can be so attached and so affected by everything they see because they're still figuring everything out and they're still sort of experiencing everything directly. But as you get older, you start mediating everything through this weird, huge system of symbols. And film's kind of about using that to negative ends.